Hello and welcome to the IslesNation podcast, the saddest one of the year, the post-elimination podcast. I'm Pete Truskowski, joined today by Mike Rankiewski and Nick Ramos. How are you guys doing today?
Sad, Pete. How about yourself?
Pretty sad, but I mean, as the day progressed, I started to get over it. How
Life
about
goes
you,
on.
Ramos?
Life goes
That's
on.
Speak for yourself on that one, Pete. I've been down the entire day. I shut it off after the third period, and I was like, I can't do this right now. So I've been down since, but that's just me, I guess.
No, it's definitely sad. I mean, put on the bright side, the Islanders did win their first playoff round in 23 years. And this elimination doesn't come with an eviction notice. So I mean, it's kind of easier to take this year, but I mean, I think a lot of the a lot has come down to the fact that my sadness came after games 3 and 4. I'm pretty sure all three of us knew the series was pretty much over then. I mean, you can't lose both games at home in a playoff series, both in a heartbreaking fashion in overtime, having a lead late. So I mean, I think that kind of took the sting off of it because I was really down after games 3 and 4. But I mean, today's performance was putrid. I mean, it's safe to say the team barely showed up in
Yeah.
an elimination game, which is pretty much what happened last year. Obviously, last year was a game 7, so things are magnified a little bit. But this year, I mean, on the road facing elimination, and the Islanders really never were in the game. So overall thoughts on the series and the Islanders play today and throughout the series?
Yeah, I don't think they necessarily didn't show up. I think, as you said, Pete, after games 3 and 4, it was, again, I don't want to say it was inevitable they were going to lose, but I would have been very, very surprised if they would have made this a 6 or 7 game series. Those two they were deflating for us as fans. I can only imagine as players on the ice how they were. And I just thought today they needed to get the first goal to really have a shot. And I think once Tampa Bay got their first goal, it I just I just think they started to almost expect to lose. And I think ultimately they Tampa Bay was better than them. I know regular season Islanders had a couple more points and they beat them 2 out of 3 times, but as we all know that the playoffs are a different animal for sure. And I just think Tampa Bay they were a deeper team. Their defense played better. Their Bishop played very well outside of game 1. And I just thought they as the series progressed, the it was of I don't want to say a complete flip of the Florida series for the Islanders, but it was a very similar where the Islanders very easily could have been up 3 games to 1 going into today. I mean, obviously you lose 2 overtime games. It's a coin flip either way. But I thought games 3 and 4 in Brooklyn, the Islanders played very well and had the better play for the majority. But Tampa Bay found a way. Now, whether you want to blame that on experience and go with that cliche route, I don't know. It could be, but it's I don't necessarily know if they didn't show up today or it's just I think once they got scored upon, I just think they expected to lose, which it's not good to do either. But Tampa Bay was just a better team, and uh, that's really I mean I know that's my summary of the series is Tampa Bay was just better. They were just a little bit better in all the phases, and it equaled to a 4-1 series victory.
Yeah, I mean, Tampa Bay is definitely the better team, and that's even without Stamkos and Strawman. I mean, that was our opportunity right there to try to take advantage of some injuries they have going on. You could tell that the Islanders were just overwhelmed by the amount of talent that Tampa Bay has. And like Pete said, that 2 games at home go into overtime and we can't pull them out. I mean, even John Tavares said after tonight's game that they missed their opportunity with those games. You know, that was a chance to really put a stamp on the series, make it close, make it competitive, and then you lose those 2 at home, those 2 heartbreakers. You go into Tampa's building, they're confident, they're riding high, and you're just trying to fight for your life at that point, and it just wasn't there. So I mean, that's honestly where we lost the series, and it doesn't take anyone with a brain to really realize that. I mean, you lose those 2 games at home, you're missing out, and it's disappointing. you got to admire the efforts, though, in those two games. I mean, honestly, they hung in there. They were with them. They were playing hard. I mean, they went to overtime. I mean, what else can you say? But honestly, they were outplaying them at periods of the game, and it just wasn't it wasn't meant to be. We didn't have that magic that we had in the first round.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think games 3 and 4 they were, we were embarrassed. Obviously, even the series. I know tonight ended, or this afternoon was not the best effort they could have done, but I don't think we were necessarily outclassed or anything. I think for large parts of the series we were the better team. And again, similar to I'm sure the Panther fans felt after their series, they probably lamented some lost opportunities in their overtime games where we won all three of them. And just so happened that this series we were on the short end of the stick for the two that went into overtime. So it was just it was disappointing, as you said, Ramos, as Peter said as well, that it's they had their chances. You thought maybe with Strawman and Stamkos out of the lineup, they would be a little bit better matchup for the Islanders, and Tampa Bay just they give them full credit. Their depth absolutely shown, was great in this series, and something the Islanders obviously I don't think they could say the same.
Well, absolutely. I mean, going a little further into that, as we said, the series was lost in games 3 and 4. But going even further into in game 3, the Islanders came out hot, and after the first period, it was tied 1-1 with Callahan's late power play goal. And the Islanders very easily could have left that period up 3 or 4-0. And in game 4, the same thing happened. Oposo scored early on the power play. And then Tavares hit the crossbar. DeHaan had that mini break in where he tried going 5-hole. The series was lost when the Islanders failed to jump out to a bigger lead in those two games, because in both games they came out flying. And I know Ben Bishop might not have looked great in this series. I mean, he up 4 goals in 2 games. And I mean, there were times where he looked kind of shaky. But he won the series for Tampa Bay by keeping them within striking distance in those 2 games. Because the way the Islanders came out in those 2 games, they should have had 2 or 3 goal leads in both of them.
Yeah, that was I think the big issue, as you said, Pete. In those games 3 and 4, the Islanders just could not get a multiple goal lead, and that's the sign of, as you said, Bishop. You may look back at his overall numbers in the series, and they don't look great. They're good, obviously, but they're not great. And you may say, well, did he really win the series for them? But as you said, those 2 home games for the Islanders, they came out on fire. They easily could have had multiple goals in both periods to begin the game. And Bishop kept his team in it, made some big saves until his teammates kind of found their sea legs. So, yeah, I agree 100% there that Bishop was he played like a Vezina finalist the last few games of the series, especially in Brooklyn, where, as you said, the Islanders came out flying, and they really had an opportunity to go up 2, 3, 4 goals, and they just could never do so. And Tampa kept it close and picked their spots, and were able obviously to capitalize on their chances.
And before Ramos speaks, another thing I'd like to add, in game 4, I had a bad feeling after that 4-minute power play that the Islanders couldn't gain the zone on. They were up 1-0 and could have taken a stranglehold on that game. And instead of gaining momentum and adding in a second goal, they gave Tampa all the momentum. And that, to me, that right there, I was like, this isn't going to end well.
I was going to say the same exact thing, Pete. That 4-minute power play in Game 4 changed the entire outlook. I mean, you can tell in Barclays Center the momentum shift. You can tell the energy in the crowd. I mean, it went from extreme excitement to, oh crap, what's going to happen now? So I think, like you said, the entire momentum after that completely switched, and they did jump out to a 1-0 lead, like you said. And I know Mike said that he feels like if we would have jumped out early in Game 5 here, that we would have had, a better chance. But honestly, I don't think it would have made a difference, to be completely honest with you. They've had 1-0 leads this series, and they've blown them both. They just could not play with a lead consistently and know how to hold it. They just blew their chances, and like Pete said, they did not know how to build upon their lead. They didn't know how to stop on Tampa's neck while they had the chance. And I think that is just huge. You've got to be able to hold leads in the playoffs, otherwise you're not going to make it.
See, I don't. While yes, the 4 minute power play in Game 4 was huge because they couldn't build on a lead. I don't necessarily know if that was the point where the game swung. I mean, that was in the first period, and obviously Tampa Bay didn't score until 7 or 8 minutes into the third period. So the Islanders had their chances even beyond that. They, as I think Pete mentioned earlier, Tavares hits the post on a point blank shot. Dahan shorthanded just doesn't get enough, or he can't get the 5 hole on Bishop and makes a big save there. So the power play was dreadful. I'm not advocating saying anything different. It was really a pathetic performance, and I don't, that really. It's funny they scored I think 4 power play goals this series, but I think most people would say that power play let them down big time this series for many of the reasons why we touched on already, and even tonight or this afternoon, they got a power play 10 seconds into the game, and yeah, Ramos, maybe they still don't win today if they get the first goal. But I think for a team that was obviously very maybe shell shocked a little bit, demoralized after the last 2 games, they could have got one in the first couple minutes of tonight's game on the road. Maybe put a little bit of fear or a little bit of pressure back on Tampa Bay that hey, if we can't win this, we got to go back to Brooklyn, and maybe they start to grip their sticks a little bit tight. And I think it just would have relaxed the whole group tonight if they could have got the first one. So 10 seconds in tonight, they don't score on the power play. That 4 minute power play in game 4, where up one, if they can get at least one there, then they really have a good stranglehold. But it was not meant to be.
And I hear that, Mike. I hear what you're saying. I think the thing with the power play this whole series is that they were not timely. When they needed to come through, they weren't there. Tampa's PK came through in the clutch. The Islanders' power play, I mean, it's not even like they were generating a lot of offense and creating chances. And it's not like Bishop was just making these all-out saves and robbing us. We weren't testing them. And I know you said that you feel like Bishop really played well this series, but honestly, I don't think we tested him the way we needed to test a goaltender. We didn't have our net front presence in Lee, and I think that's absolutely huge in this series. We needed Anders Lee because we had nobody distracting Bishop, and every save he had to make was easy. I mean, he did not have to struggle for much, and the power play just did not come through when we needed them. And it showed in Game 4, like we mentioned, the 4 minute power play, and at other times they just didn't come in timely matters.
No, I mean I would agree with that, and Mike touched on it earlier. The depth is the difference in this series. The Islanders today they tried loading up the top line, which, as I tweeted, I 100% disagreed with. Putting Franz Nielsen with Tavares in a post. So I mean, if Hedman's shutting down Tavares all series, why are you putting your next best offensive weapon on that line so Hedman could shut him down too? I mean, as I tweeted after the first period, my strategy would have been to separate all 3 of those players because Hedman could only shut down one of them. And the rest of the Tampa defense, I mean, they have some solid players like Coburn and Garrison. But I mean, Schuster and Termina and Cuckoo, I mean, you could have exposed their defense as they did in Game 1 when he came out to a 4-1 lead. And I mean, you look at the Lightning, they have names like, obviously, the triplets with Palat, Kucherov, and Johnson. They have Alex Killorn, Philpott, Callahan, Jonathan Drouin, who is a huge presence in this series. I mean, if you look at the Islanders, who do they really have? I mean, you want to say Brock Nelson and Ryan Strome, but they weren't at their best in this series. So you're relying on guys like Josh Bailey, who had a good Game 3, but I mean, he's Josh Bailey. And then you have Shane Prince, Alan Quine. I mean, that's the difference in the series right there. Hedman shut down Tavares, and the Islanders didn't have enough weapons to pick up the slack like Tampa did.
Yeah, no, that's 100% accurate. If and it was a product most of the season too. And I know we'll touch on this a kind of a overview of the season, later this week and get into more of an in-depth discussion there. But it was a similar problem all year. If the top line wasn't going, the Islanders struggled to generate, and Tavares definitely did not have his best series, and a lot of that had to do with Victor Hedman, but it was also the Tampa Bay forwards, the triplets. They forced Tavares to play a lot in his own end, and as we know, he's not a Selke Award winner by any stretch. I think he tries. I think he knows what he needs to do. I just don't think he always obviously does it. But the Tampa Bay forward group was just it wasn't overpowering, but they seemed to obviously get contributions from more more than just the top guys. I mean, Brian Boyle scores the overtime winner in Game 3. As you mentioned, Jason Garrison scored the overtime winner in Game 4. They had a lot more depth, and listen, this was a problem in the Islanders when they played the Panthers as well. It was really the top line only that was consistently generating offense. Other than that, it was kind of in drips and drabs. But against Florida, which had a weaker offense than Tampa Bay, the Islanders were able to essentially get away with it. But against the Lightning, where they have a ton of firepower up and down the lineup, they couldn't kind of mask their secondary scoring issues.
Tampa Bay definitely has more depth. I mean, they have that triplet line that's incredible, and Kucherov killed us the entire series. I mean, there was no stopping the man. I mean, I don't know what else we could have done to stop them. And like I said before, that's without Stamkos and Strawman. So they were without two key guys in their lineup, and they still have more depth than us. And we're playing guys like Quine and Prince, guys that probably wouldn't play on championship caliber teams. They wouldn't see that many minutes in the playoffs. But I mean, it is what it is, and we all saw the warning signs in Florida when we played the Panthers. We saw us struggling against that team, and then coming to Tampa Bay, a team that has even more depth and more talented players and more experience. We saw the warning signs, and I'm honestly proud of the Islanders because between the series against the Panthers and the series against the Lightning, we played so much better against the Lightning. We really did. Against the Panthers, I do not think we played well at all. I don't think we deserved to win that series, but we did. This series, we played incredibly well, I felt like, in games 2 and 3 especially, and 1, obviously. But we weren't able to get the overtime goals that we got against the Panthers. So I think that's just huge. I mean, we played better. I'm proud of them for it, but in the end, I mean, Tampa Bay is they were just overpowering for us. They had too much talent, and we couldn't stop them.
No,
You
I mean,
know,
I would definitely. I mean, I feel like I have to mention the fact that injuries to guys like Anders Lee and Mikhail Grabovski make that middle six look a lot worse than it is at full strength. But I mean, our team has to be able to overcome injuries. As Ramos just said, I mean, Tampa was without on it. Honestly, you take Stamkos and Strawman, and that's like taking Tavares and Hamonic out of the Islanders lineup. I mean, if you take those two out of the Islanders lineup, they're competing in a playoff series in the AHL. I mean, it just goes to show how. I mean, obviously we're not going to touch on this a lot today, but it goes to show how far the Islanders really have to go to be a legitimate contender in this league. Because, I mean, Anders Lee is a nice player. He's a net front guy in the power play. He could work the boards, chip in some goals. And Mikhail Grabovski is a shifty guy with some offensive talent, good possession player. But, I mean, they're not really needle movers like Steven Stamkos is for the Lightning. And the Islanders weren't really able to overcome injuries to guys like Lee and Grabovski. And honestly, I mean, the middle six would look better because you'd probably sit guys like Bernier and Prince and Quine. And honest to God, Brock Nelson deserved to sit in this series and throughout the playoffs. So you'd have more options. But I mean, still to this point, I mean, it just really goes to show like how far the Islanders have to go as a team and as an organization to be where they have to be.
yeah, no, I think the depth, and it's mostly, and I'm looking, yeah, it sucks that they lost Lee, for the playoffs. Whether or not that would have been enough to swing the series, obviously, I'm not going to go there. I mean, yes, they would have had probably a better power play in the sense that they would have had a bigger body there, but um, the Islanders were not doing anything with if Brock Nelson, Ryan Strome, guys like that, Franz Nielsen, they just didn't do anything this round. And obviously, and to be fair, Tavares only had 2 points, and they were both in game one, so they struggled offensively. But again, it's while people will obviously they'll load up on the superstar and say, hey, he needs to come through, and I agree he does. They needed another threat, a consistent threat, and there was never that threat where Tampa Bay had to say, well, we need to play our best defensive group in against somebody other than Tavares, or at least put the fear that they would have to. That never happened. Brock Nelson, as you said, Pete, was just a train wreck all playoffs. He had very, very little good moments. I thought Strome was okay. He wasn't great. Obviously, the coaching staff didn't think he was very good for a few of the games and benched him. But those guys, those are first round picks. Whereas for a team again, and we'll get more into the overview of the season later on in the week, but those are guys you're counting on. They're top round picks. Strome's a top 5 pick. Brock Nelson was the last pick in the first round. Those are guys you're expecting to be big contributors at this point in their careers, and they were not. For Nelson, this is the second year in a row where he kind of just crapped the bed in the playoffs. Strome, I think most people expected to have another step towards a big season this year, and he just wasn't very good. And those guys, to me, are the biggest culprits as to why their secondary scoring was an issue all season. And you're right. Then you're stuck kind of bringing up a guy like Alan Quine from Bridgeport in the last week of the season. And next thing you know, he's playing on the top line, and that shouldn't be. This is that to me. That's the disappointing part overall with the season is after all these years. And obviously, I think all three of us know there will be a lot of changes in this offseason with free agency and trades. This was the best this team kind of could do. And, right, while they were not, I don't think, outclassed by Tampa Bay, as Pete mentioned, I think it goes to show you that this team still has a few steps to go before they can, I think, legitimately be considered a Stanley Cup contender. And that's disappointing. That's, to me, the disappointing part about this season is, if this is the end of an era, which I think the Post kind of called it as, and which it probably is, it really, while it gave us obviously a great first round this season, it just didn't give us enough results over the last decade, and that's the real sad part.
I know we don't want to go too far here beyond the playoffs and into the offseason, but I mean, I think this playoff period really raised a lot of question marks about a lot of guys. I mean, how many chances are we going to give Brock Nelson, Kuhlman, Strome? I mean, how long are we going to wait, for them to step up and be the players that we think they should be and reach the potential that they should be reaching? It's honestly a question now because they really didn't step up in the playoffs. And you did say it's been an issue all year. And Capuano has called them out on, the secondary scoring. Guys need to step up, and they just didn't. Tampa Bay completely shut down John Tavares. They had guys on him. Hedman shut him down, and they made sure that he was their focus. So other guys, and not to call it Okposo and stuff, I mean, he only had, a goal, maybe an assist this series. We need them to step up. We need them. We need Franz Nielsen to pitch in with a few points. We need Strome. We need Brock. We needed them to step up, and they failed to deliver in the playoffs in the biggest moments. And I don't know how much of a leash we are going to give them going forward with that. So to me, it's just a lot of question marks from the last two postseasons watching this team play. I just don't know if I can trust these players in the postseason.
That's a fair point. But again, it should never got to the point where you're relying on the Alan Quines and the Shane Princes. Again, these are depth guys. These are probably, in a perfect world, your 13th forward types, where if you need a little bit of a boost and the team's not playing well, you insert one of these guys into the lineup and hope to kind of catch lightning in a bottle, or obviously if there's a few injuries. But that was our issue. Yes, Anders Lee wasn't there. That's one guy. Mikhail Gabrowski, another. I don't know how much realistically he could be counted on even before the season, considering his injury history. So it just goes to an overall these these especially those middle six guys. What it was just disappointing. They had a disappointing season for the most part. You kind of, like you said, you hope maybe the playoffs they would have woke up a little bit and been more consistent. And they had a few moments here and there, but it was really a microcosm of the season, the playoffs, that we just did not get enough consistency from those middle six group, no matter who was in those second, third line spots, and that killed us, as you said, Ramos. Tampa Bay had an answer for Tavares, whether it was Hedman or the triplet line, or even Brian Boyle. They did a great job defensively on him. They frustrated him. They limited his opportunities. They forced him to play in his own end more than I'm sure he wanted to. And no one on the Islanders could really pick up the slack there for them and really again put some fear that to Tampa Bay that maybe there was some other threat on the Islanders. There was no threat. They stopped Tavares and that was it.
No, I completely agree with you guys. That overall, I know we're not going to talk about the season as a whole and moving forward, but that's the biggest issue right here. As I tweeted earlier today, it's the middle six. I mean, we have a hell of a player in John Tavares, and we probably won't have him next year. But Kyle Post is a hell of a right-handed man to have. I mean, there's not much better 1-2 combos in the league. But beyond that, I mean, they're young, yeah, but they should be contributing, guys like Strome and Nelson. So as a whole, I mean, you have to question that their roles in this organization moving forward. And I mean, it's going to be a watershed summer. I mean, guys like Franz Nielsen, Kyle Poso, and Matt Martin are free agents. Obviously, the Travis Hamonic trade request. So I mean, Garth's going to have some decisions to make. And I mean, one of those decisions is going to have to be whether he trusts someone like Brock Nelson after letting him down 2 straight years when the games really count. Does he trust him as a member of the core? I mean, yeah, he put up, I think it was 26 goals this year, but was he a needle mover? I mean, I feel like 15 of those goals came in a month.
I can't believe he put up 26. If I didn't see him myself, I wouldn't believe it. Or if I didn't see the stat sheet afterwards, I wouldn't believe it because it really is amazing. He put up 26 goals. It's as you said, it was just shocking. 26 goals, but how many were? I don't say how many were impactful, but he just too many stretches where he just goes invisible, and unfortunately for the second year in a row, he no shows in the playoffs. Disappointing. He to me, and I guess maybe I'll transition to this. Was he your biggest disappointment in the playoffs, or somebody else? What do
My
you think?
biggest disappointment, and it's probably more of a fear at this point than a disappointment, it's Johnny Boychuk, man. We're paying this guy big money for a long amount of time. And I know a main problem my other fans had was splitting up the deep pairings when you had two that worked. I mean, Letty and Boychuk weren't the Letty and Boychuk of last year, this year, but they still got it done overall. And obviously, Hamnick and Dahan have been a mainstay for the last few years, and they play well together. And obviously, Capuano split them up in the playoffs, putting Hamnick with Letty and Boychuk with Dahan. And that Boychuk Dahan pairing was a train wreck in these playoffs. And overall, throughout the season, I thought Calvin Dahan had a all right regular season. I mean, he's a fine depth guy. I think he's a four. He's a bottom pairing guy. Ideally, you could get by with him as a four. He doesn't have enough offense to be really a top four guy, which is sad because he has the offense potential. He skates well and he can move the puck. But I mean, those two in the playoffs, they couldn't. The overtime goal in Game 4 was a dump in. Calvin Dahan couldn't clear the puck out. Ended up losing his stick. Oposo ended up giving Dahan his stick, and Oposo couldn't cover the point. And Garrison had a wide open lane to one time him, and that was with Dahan trying to play goalie in front of Grice and screening him. So I mean, that pairing as a whole, that's my biggest disappointment. Those two guys are guys that we expect to be top four players for us. And Johnny Boychuk is signed for a long time for a lot of money. And with the way he plays, his physical style, and the way he gave his body up throughout the first few years of his career, I mean, we saw with Trent Hunter, these guys, when they lose a step, they lose it quick, and there's no recovering. So if that's happening to Johnny Boychuk, man, we are screwed.
I agree. I mean, Boychuk was rough, and he's someone that you don't want to call out and think he's playing bad because he's such a likable guy. But he's been rough. I mean, he gets the puck in his zone and he just slings it somewhere. I mean, it's constant, and then the puck gets trapped in his zone. I mean, it led to so many issues, and then overtime goal in Game 4. I mean, that was the biggest disaster I've ever seen by a pair of defensemen. I mean, you have Boychuk slipping and falling along the boards trying to catch up to a forward. Then you have DeHaan. I mean, Grice easily has that save. That is an easy save. No one's in front. The shot's from the point. He'll have it. DeHaan just decides to park himself right in front of Grice and just sit there. And Grice is just completely screened, can't see the shot, and they score. I mean, it was the biggest mess, and that right there to me was the turning point of my feelings towards those two. I mean, I was like, okay. When I look back now, they've kind of sucked, and that just was a nail in the coffin for me, where I was like, all right, that's enough. That's just ridiculous. You're a defenseman. You should know how to position yourself. You should be able to skate on your feet and keep up with the forward. I mean, it's just a mess, and I am worried, just like Pete. I'm very worried about JB because I think he has lost a step or two, and like you said, with his style, he's had a few um, injuries in the past, and it's worrisome, and it's something we're going to have to look for earlier, and the Islanders will have to make a decision on. But the defense as a whole to me is just very worrisome. That's two playoffs in a row, the last 2 seasons, where the defense just really isn't there. We're just letting in too many goals.
I don't want to get too off topic, but the Islanders really don't have a decision to make with Johnny Boychuk. He has a no-move clause. They can't buy him out. They can't move him.
No,
Yeah.
They can't even expose him in an expansion draft because he has a no-move clause.
Exactly.
And to add to that, Johnny Boychuk's stats in the playoffs, no points, -7.
Yeah.
Listen, he was definitely disappointing along with DeHaan. What I'll say about Boychuk is, I know he had an injury in the middle of the season, and he just looked off in these playoffs. Even his shot, he was reluctant to shoot the puck. So I don't know. I don't want to say I'm going to give him a complete pass, but I'm curious to see how he comes back next season if his shoulder's healed. Because I would not be shocked if we hear in the next couple of days that he had some type of lingering injury that essentially whether it's a shoulder or something with his upper body.
Shoulder doesn't affect your skating, though, bud. I mean,
No,
it's skating.
but he's never a great skater, and I mean that was never his strong point. But you can always look to say, okay, well, he'll be decent positionally, he'll be physical force back there, throw his body around, and he'll offensively he can get the puck on net with his shot. He's got a good shot. So I'm hoping. I mean, again, it's more of a hope, but I'm willing to give him a little bit and see how he does. Obviously, next season early on. And to the people who are screaming that they have to trade him, it's not going to happen. Beyond the fact that you have a no movement clause, they traded a number of 2 draft picks for this guy last season, and they gave him a big contract. There's just no way on God's green earth that practically you're going to go to him now and say, well, we want to trade you 1 year into your 7-year deal. I can't imagine them looking around, or other free agents looking around the league and saying, this Islander team, they were for so many years they were essentially begging people to sign with them. They finally got a kind of one of the named players to sign there, and they trade him a year later. I understand that's not how it should work, but I think there is some business side of it too, and perception around amongst the league, amongst the players is you can't just 1 year into a contract say, we screwed up, so we're gonna goodbye Johnny Boychuk. I think that's sends a bad message to other potential free agents that 1 year into this deal and that's it. That's all we get. Couldn't have been a bad year.
To be fair, no one's taking that contract either.
You know what though? Again, I don't know. I don't know because as you said, is this a decline? Is this what he's going to be for the next 6 years, or is this an injury-riddled season where he struggled? I don't know the answer to that. We're not going to know until next season, to be quite honest. He didn't come up right away. He didn't start his career at 22 years old in the pros, so I think he has a little bit less mileage on his body than maybe some other players who at 31, 32, 33 really fell off a cliff. Doesn't mean, listen, maybe this is what he is, and maybe we're stuck with a declining player for the next 6 years making a lot of money. I mean, that could happen. But before I kind of go down the path of how the hell do we get rid of him, I am willing to see what happens next season, especially early on, to see if he's kind of, okay, was this an aberration? Was he really hurt? Or, is this really what we what we should expect from here on forward. But him and Dahan, I thought Dahan was terrible these playoffs. And what's disappointing with Dahan is, as you both mentioned, he's not going to put up a lot of points offensively. But you figured in a series with maybe Tampa Bay being a little more skill-oriented, he can maybe skate a little bit through the neutral zone. His offensive instincts he never developed them, which is quite surprising because when he was picked 12th overall, I think it was 12th overall, you kept reading how he's got offensive awareness, he's a good skater, he can make a good first pass, and these playoffs it was bad. It really he was terrible. Him and Boychuk were really bad, and obviously Brock Nelson did Brock Nelson things.
No, and that's the thing. I know when Carrie's obviously usually on this podcast. When Dahan and Hamonic played together, there was always a perception that Dahan was the offensive guy and Hamonic was a defensive shutdown guy. And Carrie always argues that and says it's the other way around. That Hamonic's the offensive guy, moves the puck and skates with the puck, and Dahan's more of a shutdown guy. And I mean, that also adds to the question why you're pairing Letty and Hamonic, who are two free skaters, move the puck, like the puck on their stick. Then you pair Boychuk and Dahan. And Boychuk, as Ramos said, he treats the puck like a grenade. I mean, if this guy didn't wear 55, I think I was watching Brian Strait out there in these playoffs. The amount of rim around icings, passes to no one, useless dump-ins. I mean, he really, I don't know. I don't know if it's the injury. I mean, it might be that he's reluctant to skate with it and he doesn't trust his shoulder, doesn't want to take contact. But I mean, he couldn't make an outlet pass to save his life. He couldn't break out of the zone. He kind of looked like Brian Strait out there in these playoffs. And I mean, it might be a bit overstating it, but not by much.
No, he was bad. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying he was good in these playoffs. He wasn't. I'm not ready to kind of throw him out and say, well, we have to find a way, to get rid of the contract, whether we, kind of couple him with a draft pick or a prospect. I'm not ready to go down that route. I still think I'm willing to see what happens next year and to see, okay, again, is this an aberration this past season, or again, is this what we should anticipate going forward? I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll see a better Boychuk next season. And again, he's never going to be the most fleet of foot. He's never going to make the prettiest passes out of his zone. But as you both said, he just, especially this playoffs, he was very reluctant to make a play, make a good pass. Everything was firing out of the zone. And whether that was it by design or a conscious effort because he is just not confident in his ability, we will see. But they were not good this playoffs, and I think they were the biggest. The Islanders' consistently worst or biggest weak link this whole playoffs run.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of got off topic with what we're going to do with JB, but as far as him this series, I mean, he's the guy that we signed in order to be a veteran presence. He's a Stanley Cup champion. We need him to step up. He's one of those guys that we signed because we expected him to come through in the playoffs. And he simply did not. And that's what it comes down to me. He did not step up when we needed him. He was not the veteran presence that this young Islanders team needed. Letty, he's not a complete offensive guy. He has, the amazing smooth skating. He has a good zone entry. But, we don't expect him to score a bunch of goals. Boychuk, we expect him to run that point, and we expect him to have some rockets, shoot on the net, not be hesitant.
But it's not a young team, though. There's a misconception here that all season that this is not a young team. Kyle Post has been in the league. He's 20 years old. This is his 8th season. John Tavares played 7 seasons in the league, or Josh Bailey's been in here 8 years. Franz Nielsen's been here. He's 32 now. Nick Leddy's won a cup with Chicago. Calvin DeHaan's been up at least the last 3 or 4 years. Hamonic the last 4 or 5 years. This is not a young team. I don't know. I mean, I think there's this misconception around the league is the upcoming Islanders. They're not up and coming. Which is what makes this run what makes losing this series. While yes, it's nice they beat Florida, it makes it just more disappointing because as we touched on, there's going to be some significant turnover this offseason. Whether it's Hamonic being traded, Oposo not signing, Who knows what they do with Franz Nielsen? Who knows what they do with Matt Martin? Who knows what they do with some of these players where they decide to trade them? Yes, they have some young guys. Ryan Strom's a young guy. Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, these are younger players, but Ryan Pulak, obviously. But this is not some upstart team that just they're a bunch of second and third year players. This is a pretty veteran. This is a young veteran team. I'll say. I don't know their exact age on
I mean,
average,
I
but this is not a young team that they had this upstart run. That was against Pittsburgh 3 years ago. This is a veteran team.
I get what Mike's saying. I mean, it's their third playoff appearance in 4 years. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I feel like by their third playoff run as a core, teams like Chicago and LA and Pittsburgh were making significant runs and winning cups at this point. I mean,
Pittsburgh won a cup in their third run. They were in the finals by the second run. The third run, they won a cup.
I mean, I get it that we still want to cling to the fact that we're a young, rebuilding team on the upswing, and we have nice players in the farm system like Pulak and Dal Cole and Barzell, and hopefully they make an impact in the NHL. But I mean, if you think like significant parts of the rebuild, guys that we remember getting called up as a big part of the rebuild, like Kyle Poso and Travis Hamonic, they're probably gone next year. I mean, this isn't a rebuilding team anymore. And which is why I said earlier in the show, it's kind of disappointing to see how far we have to go. Because this team, it might not be a completely finished product, but it should be damn near close. And I get we don't want to get too far into the overall scheme of like the picture here and what we're going to do going forward. But I mean, the Islanders, they're not a young. I mean, Johnny Boychuk, I get what Ramos was trying to say. He was signed with the reputation of a guy that raised his game in the playoffs, and you get the fruits of his labor in the playoffs and style of play suits Johnny Boychuk and all that. So it's disappointing to see him not step up in the playoffs. But I don't think that it's his responsibility to carry the team. And I mean, maybe last year when a lot of the players were in their second go around and their first go around with expectations, because the Pittsburgh series they snuck in as a team with I think 6 or 7 players off waivers on a miraculous run. So there were no expectations there. But last year they were a team that was at the top of the league all year. So there were expectations there. And Johnny Boychuk probably played a significant role in that series, trying to guide them through. But I mean, at this point, the Islanders have to get rid of that label that they're an up-and-coming team, because this is what they are. These are the New York Islanders. This is the product that Garth Snow rebuilt, and this is pretty much the finished product. And I mean, obviously Barzal will be added, but he'll be replacing someone like Kyle Poso. So I mean,
Yeah,
it's not like we're adding players and not losing players here. It's not like we're just continually getting better. We're replacing older, more expensive talent with younger talent, which is what rebuilding teams do. But at this point, the Islanders should be further along in the process.
yeah. No, this is definitely a this group as again. I think the Post. I think it's the Post. Basically called it's the end of an era, and I know that sounds very dramatic, but it's right. It's correct in a way because, as we mentioned, no, most likely next season, no Hamonic, no Poso. Who knows Who else is here? And those two pieces were two of the earlier and key cogs that we were kind of promised that we're going to kind of take this team back to the promised land. And I still remember Kyle Poso scoring his first goal against the Devils back in '08, I believe, or maybe it was '09. His helmet popped off. He had a mohawk in his head, and he scored his. I think it was his first or second game if he ever played against the Devils.
Yep.
And you kind of think, wow, it's been 8 years since that happened. And right, this is where we are. We went to the second round, which is obviously better than where they've been in over 2 decades, but it's clearly not good enough. And now we have to kind of wait and see what happens this summer as far as reloading this team and getting them back to where they are, where they can hopefully be a contender. But they're going to have some work to do just to even get back to this point because they're going to lose some big pieces.
I know Pete touched on how we have guys like Barzal, the younger guys, coming up to replace guys like Oposo. But honestly, that's a vicious cycle to get into. I mean, you are replacing experience, talent, a guy that is a sure thing with another rookie. So what happens in next playoffs? We're going to be in the same scenario where we have this unexperienced guys. Oh, we're going to make it next year. They have experience now. I mean, it's just going to be a cycle. So, I mean, I know we don't want to talk about next season, but I mean, this is integral. We got to take this postseason and we have to build on it. We can't be losing guys and trying to replace them with the younger guys. We have to build on the momentum. We won our playoff round. How are we going to get better? How are we going to get to the next level? And getting to that next level is not losing guys like Okposo. You can't lose a guy like that and expect to improve your team by replacing him with a younger talent. You got to replace him with another guy maybe like Stamkos or something. I mean, you got to find a way because this playoff showed us that we're not good enough. We're not good enough. We don't have the depth. We don't have the talent to compete with the elite of this league. And if we want to get there, we are going to have to retain the guys that we know can step up. And honestly, we're going to have to dump the guys that haven't proven anything to us. So that's just my stance on it for now. Maybe it'll change. Maybe you guys can convince me otherwise, but that's just where I'm at.
No, I mean, listen, I think it's fair to be at a point where you're frustrated. And especially the last 2 years, we've gotten, I think, a pretty good sense of who to get to cliche, who do you want to go to war with? Is Brock Nelson a guy you think you can get to go to war with? At the last two playoffs, at least to me, have shown I don't expect when the things get tough that he's going to increase his game and rise to the occasion. He hasn't proved it. Now, are we ready to throw that out because we've had enough? Maybe, but as we've said, he did score 26 goals. And at some point, you still need to replace those 26 goals. And we've been harping on about these playoffs that really secondary scoring was one of the key issues where we were deficient. Does trading Brock Nelson make us better or help us get better in that department? I don't know, and that's obviously a decision that'll have to be made over the summer. But let's talk about at least a positive. Who, and let's say beyond Tavares, because he obviously against Florida was otherworldly. Who this playoff run kind of gives you the most hope going forward, gave you the best playoff or surprised you? What at least we'll stay with a positive. Which guy or guys really exceeded expectations in your eyes?
I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, outside of Tavares, I think Thomas Hickey had a great playoff run. I mean, but he's still what he is. I mean, it's not like this playoff run catapults him into a top four defenseman. Thomas Hickey's Thomas Hickey. I think most Islander fans appreciate Thomas Hickey for what he is. And he stepped up in the playoffs, that big overtime goal, physical presence. I mean, he's done it in every playoffs he's been in with us. He's been a solid player. He's been a solid Islander. And, I mean, the other player that kind of showed me something, I mean, earlier in the year, I know me and Mike were sour on him and thought he was a non-factor, but I mean, Shane Prince might be an NHL player from what he showed me. I mean, he's obviously not a top-line guy, but I mean, he could slot in around the top 9. He would be great. He's a good depth forward, and I mean, I think in these playoffs he showed that he's an NHLer.
Yeah, we definitely were hard on Prince at the deadline because, to be quite honest, I never heard of Shane Prince before the Islanders acquired him. So I had no idea who he was, and clearly if you couldn't make Ottawa's club, then what were you doing being our key acquisition? But yeah, I thought he played surprisingly well down the stretch and in the playoffs. I think he had a little bit of he played a tough game. He's obviously not a big guy, but I don't think he showed any fear, which is nice. Smaller guy, and he had a couple goals obviously this series against Tampa in the first round and the first game, so he definitely showed something. And I think the one positive to me that I think, especially going forward, that I'm excited about is Ryan Pulak. I think he will be a top 4 guy for this team for a long time until obviously he requests a trade to get home closer to the farm or whatever the case might be. But I think he's the one besides the obvious in Tavares and even Grice, who played, I think, had a very strong playoffs. I think most would agree. I think Ryan Pulak showed some. He was kind of what he was hyped up to be. Good offensive awareness, good skater, a cannon of a shot, and not terrible defensively. He's a work in progress.
The Brian Boyle goal today was was Pulak letting Boyle walk out from behind the net and roof it on Grice.
But there was a forward. But there had to be a forward. But again, there was a forward that got kind of caught up there too. That could have also slid out and made the play. Yeah, and Pulak, he's a work in progress defensively. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's not a shutdown guy, and I don't think he may never be a shutdown guy. But I think he showed, at least in this playoffs, that this might be a guy that could be a top 4 guy, maybe sooner rather than later. And maybe it will help soften the blow of losing Hamonic this summer.
Defensively, Ryan Pulak has his gaps. He had moments where he was a little lost and not positioned right. And that's something that gets better with experience, learning, where to be on the ice. But offensively, I mean, he amazed me. I mean, I did not know Ryan Pulak had the entry into the zone that he showed me. And it really wasn't until I saw live, honestly, where I was actually watching him specifically, that I saw how good he was at getting into the zone, creating some offense. Some of the passes he made, I mean, we saw them in the first round. I don't remember what game it was, but he had those 2 plays that were just incredible. I mean, he stepped up. He was one of our better defensemen. And even defensively, yes, he had his lapses. And that's expected, like I said. But, I mean, he impressed me, and he did give me some glimmer of hope when it comes to him. I mean, after the whole Reinhardt experience, I mean, that, you kind of sticks in your mind, like, well, what if this guy's a bust? He impressed me. He showed me what he can do and how he can play, and I'm excited about him going forward. But again, I don't know how he's going to develop. I don't know how this postseason helped. I mean, he got spurned all year, didn't get the minutes we thought he'd get at the NHL level, but then he came into the playoffs and he showed himself. So going forward, I really want to see more of him. He impressed me, and he's something I'm excited about.
No, absolutely. And I mean, Mike touched on Grice. I like the guy. I thought he was very good this year. Obviously, stole us the first round of the playoffs. But in this series, Thomas Grice did not come up with a big save for the Islanders. I mean, granted, they were high quality scoring chances, but at some point, you need your goalie to make a save. I mean, a lot of goals from the point. Obviously, there was some screens and traffic, but you have to fight through those. Some goals went through them. Obviously, the Drouin goal in Game 2 was kind of a backbreaker there. The Kucherov goal today. The Kucherov goal in Game 4 needs to be stopped. I don't know why he left his post. I mean, all in all, I mean, I love Thomas Greiss. I love what he did for us this year, but I think he was more of a negative than a positive in this series. Obviously, he didn't get much help, but I mean, your goalie has to be better than he was in this series if you're going to beat a high-powered team like the Lightning.
Well, this is where I'm going to kind of disagree with you, Pete. And honestly, I've been a skeptic of Greiss. I've been a fan of Halak, and Greiss has been kind of a little adjustment period for me. But honestly, I put very little blame on Greiss in this series because I did not see the defense helping him at all. I mean, you cannot give Kucherov 10 feet of space right in front of the net. I mean, he's going to score. You cannot leave talented Tampa Bay Lightning players open in the high slot like that. I mean, it was just a disaster defensively, and I literally put no blame on him. I mean, he did everything he could, and there were saves that he made that were incredible, and he kept us in games at points when the Islanders go through those stretches where they could not get it together. I mean, there was periods in every single game this series where it was almost a 5-minute stretch of just an onslaught of Tampa Bay offense, and he kept us in it. So I don't put that much blame on Greiss. I think he stepped up. Was he as good as he was in Florida? Probably not. I mean, the way he played in Florida against the Panthers was incredible. He was lights out. But you know what? You can only expect so much out of your goaltender when you're playing all these games in the postseason. You're playing, with only a day or two break. I mean, it's tiring, and he probably got burnt out at the end of it. I mean, he was going against so much offense, and the defense just was not helping him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I thought overall he was fine this round. He wasn't as strong as he was against Florida, but he was also facing, I think, much better talent offensively than in Tampa Bay. And the Islander defense didn't do him any favors. He did let up a few goals which were not great. As Pete said, the Drouin goal in Game 2, I believe it was, between the 5-hole, is a goal that he should stop, and I think he would probably admit that. He wasn't great. He was good. I try to kind of set expectations. He's a career backup who obviously was thrust into a number one starter role, played very good in the regular season, played very good against the Panthers, and he didn't. I don't think he didn't consistently make that big save in this round, but I think it's also if you're at the point where the only way you're going to win is if you need your backup goaltender to basically pull a rabbit out of his ass, well, then you're probably not going to win to begin with. So, yes, I would love him to have been a little bit sharper in some of the goals, but I thought overall he was fine. Whether or not he was a negative or a positive, I don't know. I think he was one of their better players throughout this round, which probably shows you that's why it ended in five. But he's a backup goaltender. He did what a backup goaltender does. He gave you a hot stretch for a little bit. He cooled off a little bit, and then he made saves, but he didn't consistently make that big save. Is that his fault? Or is that fair? I don't know, but I think that's how I saw it.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm not blaming Grice for this series loss. The Islanders simply weren't good enough on either side of the puck. But I mean, as in the playoffs, you need your goalie to come up with some saves he shouldn't make. And that Game 4 tying goal with Kucherov in the low circles, beating Grice near post under the blocker. I mean, you would really like your goalie to make that save there in that position, especially with the Islanders up a goal in the third period, and they needed that game.
Well, yeah,
And, I
listen,
mean,
that's absolutely. It wasn't a great goal to give up. Like you said, he left his post a little bit early, got beat short side from basically between the dot and the boards, but your goalie let up one goal in regulation. And if you're going to tell me in a playoff game that my goalie's going to let one goal in regulation, I'm probably going to think, well, we won that game pretty easily. I bet. I'm sure we got 2 or 3 by Bishop, and we won the game. So, right, it was a goal that I would have loved him to make the save clearly, but at some point you can't just rely on your goaltender to pitch a shutout to win. If the strategy is we need our goaltender to pitch a shutout in order to get back in the series, I think it's a little bit unfair expectations for a guy of his skill level. He's not a Henrik Lundqvist type of goalie or Carey Price where he's the franchise guy. This was a backup goaltender kind of thrown into that number one spot, and I think did a very solid job in that position.
no, I definitely agree. I don't want to be too hard on Grice right now. I don't want it to come off that way, but all I'm saying is he wasn't as good in this series as he was in the Lightning series, which obviously is saying nothing because he was spectacular in the Lightning series. So I don't want to harp on Grice. But he was more than adequate
I'm
throughout
gonna
the
put I'm
playoffs.
gonna I'm gonna put it out. Headline: Pete says Grice is to blame for the series loss.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, obviously, Grice led us to our first series win in 23 years. Stepped up all year. I love the guy. Just being a contrarian here.
No, no.
So
Listen, he definitely wasn't as good as he got once against Florida, but it was he didn't get much help this series by any stretch.
I mean, look who he's going up against. I mean, Tampa Bay has so much talent and such better shooters than Florida had. I mean, and like Mike said, I mean, he let in one goal in Game 4. Was it a bad goal? Yeah, it was a bad goal. But you know what? If you're only scoring one goal in a game, you're not going to win. Not in the playoffs. You got to score. And we simply didn't give him enough support. We didn't help him defensively. And I thought he played good enough to where we could win games if the Islanders had played better. So I mean I can't put much blame on him. I feel bad for the guy, and honestly, goaltending is always an issue because you win and you're like the goaltender played amazing. You lose and you're like the goaltender sucked. I mean, it's just how it is in the NHL these days. A lot of emphasis on the goalies. They are a key player. They're basically the quarterbacks, in football. So I mean, it's tough to put blame on him. For me, I think he did everything he could, and I don't think he played that bad.
Look at this fanboy defending this guy to the end.
would it be wrong if I said I agreed with you guys, but I think I'm right?
You could say it. I don't know if you're correct, but you could say whatever you like. Your podcast.
So overall, Capuano, in our opinion, and it's been pretty much published by Arthur Staple on Twitter, his job saved after that series win. I know a lot of Islander fans hate the guy. So what do you guys think of his coaching throughout the playoffs, especially in this series. Is this someone the Islanders can move forward with?
Well, I am not a Capuano fan. I agree that he definitely is probably safe going into next season. I probably wouldn't give him more. I probably would give him until Thanksgiving, especially if they do some significant roster changes to see
We
how
say
they.
this every year.
Right, but I think the expectations are increased even more so now. And obviously, this is well before we know what the hell they're going to do this summer. But in my opinion, the expectations have to be raised. If the expectations for this season were let's get out of the first round, well, check mark, then we did that. But then for next season, they better be. We need to be in the conference finals, and or at least be well on our way to a conference finals. I thought overall this playoffs, he like the team, he had some really good moments. He hit that the challenge in Game 3 against Florida, the offsides call, probably turned and saved that series. And yes, I understand it was the video guy who nudged him to call, but that's if they don't get that call, then everyone's gonna say that's a terrible challenge by Capuano. So I can't blame him. Or I have to give him credit for that. But and I think this is probably all season as well with Capuano with this team. So I'm going to assume it was a game plan. They got away all year from carrying the puck through the zone with speed. They seem very content, even these two playoff rounds, to dump and chase. And I understand you want to be a diverse offense, and I'm not saying dump and chasing sometimes is not a bad strategy. If you can't carry the puck through the zone, you better dump and chase. You can't be predictable. They were too predictable in these playoffs. Everything was a dump and chase, dump and chase, dump and chase.
I think that actually had a huge impact in this series with the way Bishop handles the puck. He's probably the best in the
Absolutely.
league at it.
Oh, absolutely. He was fantastic, and he is. You know, they always used to say Martin Brodeur was like a third defenseman back there, and he was.
Ricky
And
D.
and guys like Martin Brodeur who could handle the puck, guys like that, and Ben Bishop.
And Rick DiPietro.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Give Ricky some goddamn credit.
he had a lot of nice plays for the other team with doing that. But you're right. Bishop was fantastic in breaking stopping the rim around pass and setting up the breakout. This was not the series to dump and chase the entire game, and we went too long stretches where it seemed like our only offensive strategy was hit the red line and dump it in. Even when we were trying to get goals, it wasn't as if we were trying to kill clock in some of these games. It seemed like that was from the drop of the puck. Our strategy was to dump and chase, and the Islanders don't have particularly. It's weird. They're we don't know what the hell they are. The Islanders, and again, I know I'm jumping off topic a little bit here, but they're not really a fast team. They're not really a skilled team. They're not really a bruising team. They're kind of a mix of everything. They don't do anything particularly great, but they do everything okay. But they just seem very content on trying to be this team that would grind you out in the corners. And I think for the fourth line, that would have been perfect. That's the right strategy. Let Martin and Clutterbuck and Cizikas kind of bang some bodies and create chaos that way. But for some of the more finesse lines, they probably should have tried to skate it in more. But they seem very content to just dump it in. And I think that ultimately stymied a lot of offensive pressure that they were not able to get in for large stretches of the playoffs.
The thing with Jack Capuano is that he does not know how to adjust. You know, he has his set system, and he doesn't know how to change it when teams adapt to it and know how to play it. And like you're saying, Mike, they did this dump and chase type offense, the entire series. You can't do that against a fast team like Tampa Bay. They're going to beat you to the puck. They're going to get it out of that zone, and they're going to come right back and transition on offense. They are too quick of a team to try that dump and chase type offense. They needed to try to find an adjustment and try to find a different way. And it just wasn't there. He made no adjustments. Who the hell knows what kind of defensive system he has? I mean, I don't even see any sort of system or coordination when they're in their own zone. It's just someone attack the D-man, someone sit back by the. I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't know what they're doing. There's just no set, there's nothing that just looks nice, and I think that's why Tampa Bay circled us for 5 minutes at a time because we didn't know what we were doing in our zone. It's just kind of like be there, get the puck, and sling it along the board, see if we can get it out. That's not going to work, and you have to adjust to Tampa Bay. It worked against Florida. It was not going to work against the Lightning. They're too talented. They're too fast. We had to find a different type of offense, and Capuano did not make the adjustments necessary.
No, and I think it's an indictment on Capuano that in the playoffs this year, first of all, the Islanders lost both home games. A coach should have an advantage there at home, and he has to be able to get Tavares away from Hedman, which he didn't really do because Hedman shut down Tavares in both home games. Tavares didn't put up a point, I don't believe. Maybe he had an assist. But either way, that's on Capuano. The fact that overall in the playoffs, the Islanders, in his tenure, I'm pretty sure they're around 500 at home, which isn't a good optic, obviously, because you should win your home games, which is why you play all season for home ice advantage. And the fact that the last two playoffs in the elimination games, the Islanders on the road didn't show up. I know it's on the players to get up and get ready to play, but I mean, Capuano has to get some blame there. But overall, coaching is a results-oriented business, and you see Bruce Boudreau, who a lot of people consider one of the best coaches in the game. You look at his Game 7 record, it's not good. But you look at the performance of his goalies in Game 7s and the performance of the opponent's goalies in Game 7s. His goalies are sporting like 800 save percentages, and the other goalies are sporting like 960s. I mean, he lost his job this year. Obviously, he was hired right away because he's a hell of a coach. But, I mean, it's a results-oriented business for a coach, and Capuano, like it or not, I think realistically the organization's goal this year, no matter what they say in the media, their goal this year was to win a playoff round, and I'm sure anything else was house money. So I'm sure internally they're happy with Capuano's job, even though most fans, and to be fair, most fan bases do not like their coach. You second guess everything. You watch him on a daily basis. You think you know better. So if you look around the league, Capuano's by a lot of fan bases around the league, he's respected, and they think he's doing a good job with the Islanders. But I mean, you see him on a daily basis, and every coach has players like Brian Strait and guys like that you think shouldn't play, but they play. I mean, look at the Islanders. Ted Nolan was obsessed with Andy Hilbert. Peter Laviolette was obsessed with Sean Bates. These coaches have their guys, and they ride them. I mean, coaching is such a fickle business. It's result-oriented. You'll never find a perfect coach that everyone's happy with. Do I think the Islanders can improve on Capuano? Absolutely. Do I think that he's a reason they lost this series? No, I don't.
Oh, it's regardless of whether anyone wants him gone, I don't think it's going to matter. I think he did enough to, in the eyes of management, to start next season. And you're right, Pete. I say it every year. He has until Thanksgiving. He probably got another 5-year contract. We just don't know. It is amazing that we never know what his contract status is, if he gets paid, if he lives rent free. I don't know any of what goes on with him. But he's not why the Islanders lost, but he didn't exactly, in my opinion, give them the best opportunity to win in these playoffs. Some of it was his own doing, and some of it was just the hand he was dealt with the players he has. Again, he's not picking the roster, he's not making trades or signing guys or drafting guys, but that's what it is. He's, for better or worse, he's our guy, and let's just hope that he can continue to improve and hopefully get this team further next season.
But even some of his decision making, when it came to lineups, I mean, like Pete said way earlier, I mean, the fact that he stacked, the first line today, the fact that he was sitting Strome, this postseason, I get it, he struggled. He has struggled all year, but you know what? You need the offense, you need the secondary scoring. You don't sit down the guy that has the amount of potential and talent that he has, and you put in Bernier in his spot. I mean, it's such a questionable call. I can't even rationalize it. I mean, I can't even defend him on it. I don't know what the whole thought process behind it. So it's things like that. Yeah, coaches have their guy that they like playing, but in the thick of it, you got to suck it up. You got to put out the best team out there. You can't pick favorites when it comes to coaching a professional sports team. You can't pick favorites. You got to have the guys that are going to give you the best chance. And if he honestly thinks that sticking Bernier in the lineup was their Islanders' best chance of helping the secondary scoring, then I'm sorry. I can't even with him, you know.
Yeah,
And
I
I
thought
mean, his
Bernie was fine. I mean, I don't know. He was signed as a
he's
13th forward.
useless. He's useless.
He
He
was
does
signed as
nothing.
he was signed as a 13th forward. He had like 20 goals last season with the Devils. He had a couple decent, decent games. He didn't. He's not gonna. To me, he's a guy where he's not gonna embarrass you out there. He's not gonna do anything stupid, and he knows what he needs to do. He's a veteran player. He's been around. He knows defensive responsibility. He knows where the puck should go. Right. He's not gonna
I
score a
don't think
ton
he
of.
helps. I don't think
But
he helps. I mean, the
but
no,
board
again,
battles,
what
he's
I'm
doing
saying,
good.
what I think Capuano's thought process is, if he doesn't like the way Strom's playing with the turnovers and is playing the defensive zone and play away from the puck, and considers him a net negative, and he inserts Bernier, who he thinks is a net zero. Zero is higher than a negative, which is coaches want to be safe. They don't want players that could cost them the game. They want
yeah,
someone they can put out there and trust.
yeah,
And
and
for
this is the
better
thing.
or worse, he might trust Bernier more than he trusts Strom at this point, which I would
Yeah,
disagree with because, like Ramos said, I feel like the offensive potential of Strom far exceeds the potential negative Strom provides. But I mean, you gotta see where he's coming from in the high 10 situation of the playoffs.
right. And I agree with that. I think Strong would have been a better choice, but I don't think we lost the series because Steve Bernier played over Ryan Strome or Alan Quine or anything like that. To me, and I know we'll touch on it later in another session, but that's the roster Scott Snow built. This is what he gave the coach to work with, and if in an elimination game, your choices are Alan Quine, Ryan Strome, Brock Nelson, Shane Prince, and Steve Bernier as kind of, and you need to play four of those five guys. Well, that's that's on the coach. I mean, that's on the general manager for giving you that talent and not giving you enough depth, as we discussed earlier on.
Well, I think that's going to play a huge part into going into next season. I mean, this offseason we all know is huge for Garth Snow, and I think whatever Snow does this offseason is going to directly correlate with Capuano. I mean, if he's given a crappy roster because Garth can't make the moves necessary, then I think he'll have a nice long leash. But you know what? If Garth knows somehow managed to put a team together that's better than this year's, and Capriano's crap in the bed come November. Thanksgiving time, I think he'll get the can. I think the expectations will be raised. But if they aren't, and this team is not built to win, again, I think they're going to stick with Capuano, which it's a tough situation. But that's just my gut feeling about the situation.
No, I'd agree with that. I think that with the new owners coming in, Snow would be smart to start the season with Capuano because if things go sour, Snow has a scapegoat right off the bat and can fire Capuano and kind of save his own job in that way. But I mean, I don't want to talk about that right now. It's a discussion for another time. So, final thoughts here. Was this a successful season? What do you guys think?
Uh, I, uh, I I don't know. I guess so. If it, they made progress over last season, and I know point wise they finished I think 1 point less this season than last year, but they went further in the playoffs, and whether they look pretty doing it or not, that's technically progress. So if you're in the mindset of we want to just keep improving, then well, this was a successful season. I based because of all the outside other stuff going on, whether again the free agents will be back, whether Hamonic will be back, the fact that this team has been together for a few years now and been in the playoffs three of the last four seasons, it's disappointing that it ended like it did. Um, Not necessarily that they lost. I just this it seemed like everything was breaking right for them. They essentially tanked the last weekend of the season to get into the quote unquote easier playoff bracket. And they did what they had to do against Florida. And then you figure Tampa Bay, no Stamkos, no Stroman. Maybe you won the first game on the road. You're thinking, holy crap, we really may do this. And maybe Pittsburgh and the Cap and Washington beat the crap out of each other. And when you get to the conference finals, you're playing a depleted team, and then all bets are off. So that's disappointing, but that obviously they couldn't take advantage of this. So overall, I'm happy that they won a playoff round. I was at Game 6, as I know Pete was as well, for an in-person moment that was as great as I've been to in for a hockey game. So to me, that part of the season is a success. That no one could ever take that memory away from me. And sports is about making memories. So that to me was a success. But it's just disappointing how it ended because I thought they had a legitimate chance going to this series that they really could have won this series, and then who knows what happens next round. So made progress. I'm happy about. They won a playoff round. Very happy about, but just very disappointed that it ended the way it did today.
I'm a guy that always likes to think it's championship or bust. So I think if they didn't win the championship, it's not a successful season. But if I'm being realistic here and I'm looking at the big picture, this season was a success. I mean, they accomplished something that they haven't done in 23 years. I mean, they've never done it in my life. They accomplished it. Good for them. Um, but I think Mike slightly touched on it in that, it was never pretty. The whole year, we saw the glaring issues coming out. We knew this team just didn't have enough. They didn't have what they needed to make it all the way. And honestly, I'm surprised that they made it as far as they did. I really am. So in that retrospect, I think it was a success. But they have a long ways to go. And as Pete said earlier, this team is supposed to be there. They're supposed to be, up there. They've been rebuilding. They're rebuilt. This is them. This is what they are. This is the team Garth Snow built. And, I think they need to be better than what they've been. And you can blame whoever you want. You can blame players. You can blame the lack of depth on Garth Snow. You can blame the coaching on Capuano. But, I mean, whatever it is. But, like I said, big picture, I'm calling it a success. They won their playoff round. They gave us something to finally be excited about, and the monkey is off the back. So we need to look, for more going forward. But, yes, successful season in my mind.
Not 9 goddamn years, and all we got is one playoff round victory. That's all I'm going to say.
I mean, I agree with you guys that it was, in the big picture, a successful season, mainly because they won a playoff round. But, I mean, I say that with a lot of reservations. And that comes from the fact that, as you guys said, honestly, if you ask me straight up, I think last year's team is better than this year's team, which would mean this team took a step back. Which, I mean, you judge a season based on a playoff round, and the Islanders, no disrespect to Florida, but the Islanders wanted to play Florida for a reason. They're a team that was built on extremely young players with no playoff experience, and a team with extremely old players, like Roberto Luongo, who's in his late 30s, Jaromir Jagr, who's in his 40s, and Brian Campbell, who's in his 30s. A lot of miles on those bodies, deep playoff runs, all three of them. And the young guys that might not be ready for the moment, I know. We weren't ready for the moment when we played Pittsburgh and Washington. And last year, I mean, the Islanders suffered injuries to 3 of their top 4 defensemen, and then they lost the playoff series. So if you're going to base it on a playoff series, I mean, they got a better draw this year, and they won. They did what they had to do. They won the series. So in that grand scheme of things, it was a success. But I mean, if you look at it, a lot of young players took a step backwards this year. Anders Lee didn't come close to touching the 25 goals he put up last year. Brock Nelson, you could argue, would take a step forward, but I mean, he's still a huge question mark moving forward. I mean, Ryan Strome went from a rookie sensation and put up over 50 points to a guy that was scratched in the playoffs, and a lot of question marks surrounding him moving forward. Was it a sophomore slump? I mean, the way the team played, the style they played, it took a step backwards. The main reason the Islanders finished with a similar amount of points was because their goaltending was a lot better this year. Their possession numbers were down. The Islanders, in my opinion, weren't as good this year as they were last year. The results obviously say a different story, and that has a lot to do with their playoff matchup. And don't get me wrong, I'm extremely happy they won a playoff series for the first time in my lifetime. But I mean, I would say it's a success, but I have a lot of reservations moving forward, and it's a huge summer for Garth Snow.
The the off-season preview and season review, or whatever it is, will be interesting when to talk about, because there's definitely a lot of issues that we need to hash out, and I know we'll all have pretty strong feelings about what they need to do and what they should do and what they should have done.
Trade everybody. Trade everybody.
Trade everybody.
That's the reasonable reaction. That's the easy thing to do. Just get rid of everyone and bring up Bridgeport.
Yeah, this Tavares guy really didn't step up in the second round. I'm not sure he's the guy I wanted my team around moving forward.
Trade him. Let's get a first round pick for him. Let's do it.
That's it. Give me more. I want more first round picks. Garth Snow hasn't had enough the last decade. I want him to have more picks.
To screw up.
Exactly. I want more failed top 5 picks in my lifetime, please.
Yeah, so I mean, it's good to end on a happy note. It was a sad day here. Rest in peace, New York Islanders, 2015, 2016.
And thank you for Ramos to coming on. We always like a Virginia drawl in our in our chat.
Have to give you that country flair, baby.
He's the most non-country Virginian you'll ever see.
Probably.
We have to get our affirmative action requirements fulfilled. So, and Carrie, I don't know what the hell's Carrie's deal. I think his vagina's sore. So we'll be back later in the week, likely to discuss the season as a whole, the offseason moving forward. A lot to talk about, a lot of question marks moving forward with this team. I mean, as we talked, we scratched the surface. We didn't even scratch the surface. We didn't want to get into depth into it here, but there's a lot to talk about this season as a whole, how it played out. The Islanders finishing 4th in the Metro, coming down from 3rd last year, finally winning a playoff round. Touch on everything in the season review, and like we said, there is probably going to be a lot of turnover this summer. So what does Garth have to do for this team to take a step forward next year? It's going to be hard because they're probably going to lose a lot of key players. So I mean, we have a lot to talk about. We're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to hopefully a fun, exciting summer. It's going to have to be if Garth wants to improve this team. Because if he sits on his hand like he did this summer, this team's not making the playoffs next year, losing Kyle Oposo and Travis Hamonic, that's for sure. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for following IslesNation all season long. Stay with us throughout the off season. Obviously, we'll keep you up to date on all Islander news and our scorching hot takes. Thanks, Mike and Ramos, for joining me.
Yes, sir.
Hope you enjoyed listening. And let's go Islanders for the final time. Good night.